I stand alone in a quiet corner of the Metropolitan Foundation gala, taking a moment to breathe. The glittering chandeliers catch the sequins on my midnight blue evening gown, casting tiny prisms across my skin. Around me, New York's elite mingle and laugh, their voices blending into a singular hum of privilege and power. Somewhere in that crowd, Elias works the room with his natural charm, building connections that will benefit his investment fund. These events drain me. I've learned to navigate them with practiced poise, but tonight I needed a moment of solitude. Just 5 minutes to reset before diving back into the carefully choreographed dance of small talk and strategic networking. My God, look, the defective item made it in. The voice slices through my moment of peace like a blade. I freeze, not turning around, hoping I've misheard. How did it get here? A second voice, higher, filled with mock surprise. Mother, you didn't invite. That embarrassment, did you? A third voice, dripping with familiar contempt. My heart pounds against my ribs as I slowly turn to face the voices that have haunted my nightmares for 12 years. They're standing there, exactly as I remember them, though time has etched deeper lines around Eleanor Robinson's cold eyes. Beside her, my sister Serafina Sarah looks at me as if I'm something she found on the bottom of her designer shoe. I attempt to walk away, to escape back to the safety of the crowd where Elias is waiting, but Sarah steps directly into my path, blocking my exit. Look at you, trying to pretend you belong here, she hisses, grabbing my arm with surprising strength, her manicured nails digging into my skin. The room blurs, and suddenly I'm 18 again, pressed against the wall of our childhood home's hallway, Sarah's face inches from mine. You're just jealous trash, she had screamed then, after I discovered a bank statement showing my trust fund money in her account. I blink away the memory, forcing myself back to the present. With deliberate calm, I pull my arm from her grasp, straightening my spine. I'm sorry, do we know each other? I ask, my voice steady despite the trembling that threatens to overtake my body. Eleanor gasps, her hand flying to the pearl necklace at her throat. Sarah's mouth drops open, her perfect makeup unable to conceal the fury blooming beneath her skin. How dare you? Eleanor steps forward, jabbing a finger toward my chest. You, with just a high school diploma. I am your mother. Mother. The word that should connote warmth and protection, instead fills me with a hollow ache. For years I've built my life, my company, my very identity, on proving them wrong, proving that I wasn't the defective child they labeled me, while Sarah was paraded as the golden one. Yet somewhere deep inside, a small part of me still flinches at their judgment, still questions my worth in ways that all my success hasn't fully erased. Is there a problem here? Dr. Arthur Robinson appears at Eleanor's side, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, the same imposing figure who once slid legal papers across his desk for me to sign away my future. Beside him stands a tall, dark-haired man in his 30s who watches the scene with growing confusion. Preston, darling. Sarah immediately pivots, her voice transforming into a honeyed plea. This suspicious person. She snuck in. Security needs to remove her immediately. Preston Vance III. I recognize the name from business circles, glances between Sarah and me, his brow furrowing. I'm not sure, he begins. But Doctor. Robinson cuts him off with a dismissive wave. Security should be notified. My father agrees, looking at me not as his daughter but as an unwelcome intruder, his eyes cold and clinical as if examining a particularly disappointing specimen. Preston's gaze lingers on me, recognition slowly dawning in his eyes. Wait, aren't you... Carlin, there you are. Elias's deep voice carries a warmth that cuts through the ice of this confrontation. He appears beside me, his tall frame commanding instant respect in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His hand finds the small of my back, a steady, grounding presence. My family falls silent, momentarily thrown off by this unexpected development. I catch the briefest flash of an earlier moment this evening, Elias adjusting his tie in our penthouse, eyes concerned as he asked if I was truly okay with attending, knowing they would be there. I know they are sponsoring a table tonight, he had said, voice gentle. I had responded with false bravado. I'm fine, Elias. They're just strangers now. How wrong I had been. Eleanor recovers first, her social instincts kicking in as she assesses Elias's obvious wealth and power. She steps forward, extending her hand to him. Sir, you don't understand who you're with, she says, her voice dripping with false concern. She gestures toward me with a dismissive flick of her wrist. This is our problematic older daughter, a high school graduate only, no ambition, a parasite. Elias doesn't take her hand. His expression remains neutral, but I feel the tension in his body beside mine. We had to throw her out of the house 12 years ago for our own sanity. Eleanor delivers this final blow with the practiced precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The room seems to hold its breath. My expression remains controlled, years of boardroom negotiations having taught me how to mask my reactions. But my hands begin to tremble at my sides, the only outward sign of the storm raging within me. I feel Elias shift beside me, and I know what comes next will change everything. I can't breathe as my father's words echo in my mind. The Metropolitan Foundation gala around me fades to gray, and suddenly I'm 18 again, sitting in my father's wood-paneled study. It's your trust fund from your grandparents, Dr. Arthur Robinson says, sliding legal papers across his mahogany desk. His tone is dismissive, as if we're discussing something as trivial as a grocery list. Just sign here, and we'll invest it for your future. My younger self nods, pen poised above the signature line. I remember the weight of that Mont Blanc pen in my hand, how important it made me feel to be included in family financial matters. Trusting. Naive. I scrawl my name across the dotted line without reading the fine print. As I hand the papers back, a movement in the hallway catches my eye. Sierra stands just outside the door, a seamstress kneeling at her feet, pinning the hem of an elaborate ivory gown adorned with hand-sewn pearls. My sister smirks at me over the seamstress's head. For the Westchester debutante ball next month, Eleanor explains, appearing behind Sarah. She'll be the belle of the evening. The realization crashes over me like Arctic water. The $150,000 from my grandparents' money explicitly designated for my education, flowing instead into silk and pearls for my sister. The sudden financial concerns that meant I wasn't college material anyway. The mysterious investment that, unfortunately, didn't work out. All lies. The trust fund was never invested. It was stolen. 3 weeks later, I found myself on our front porch, 2 suitcases at my feet, my mother's final words still burning in my ears. You'll never amount to anything, Carlin. Some people just aren't meant for success. A firm squeeze on my arm yanks me back to the present. Elias stands beside me, his eyes filled with quiet concern. Around us, the gala continues, crystal glasses clinking, wealthy patrons laughing, all oblivious to the war being waged in this quiet corner. Preston Vance stares at me, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. He steps slightly away from Sarah, creating physical distance that mirrors his growing emotional detachment. Arthur. Eleanor. Stop. His voice carries quiet authority. Do you have any idea who she is? My parents exchange puzzled glances, clearly thrown by this unexpected response from their future son-in-law. Sarah's hand tightens possessively around Preston's arm. What are you talking about? She demands. She's nobody. The moment hangs suspended, like the second before lightning strikes. Elias moves forward, his hand finding the small of my back. The touch grounds me, reminds me of who I am now, not who they tried to make me. I am Elias Thorne, he says, voice calm but resonant enough to command attention. And this is my wife, Carlin Robinson, the founder and CEO of DataSphere Analytics. The words land with physical impact. Eleanor's mouth forms a perfect O, her carefully applied lipstick suddenly seeming garish against her paling skin. My father's shoulders stiffen, the first crack in his imperious facade. That's impossible, he mutters, but the conviction in his voice has already begun to waver. I watch them process this information, these 2 people who orchestrated my exclusion with such calculated precision. Eleanor, who convinced everyone, including me, that I was fundamentally flawed. Arthur, who enabled her every manipulation while helping himself to the money meant to secure my future. Before she was my wife, Elias continues, pride evident in every syllable, she was the single best founder my fund ever invested in. I wrote her a $2 million seed check 7 years ago. Based on an algorithm she wrote herself, after teaching herself to code. Preston looks physically ill. He glances at his watch as if it might provide escape from this unfolding catastrophe. Mr. Thorne. Preston's voice is strained. Is one of our firm's largest clients. Sarah's face contorts with confusion. What does that have to do with Datasphere? Preston interrupts. Just signed a $15 million contract with us last month. My parents stand frozen, their carefully constructed narrative crumbling around them. Eleanor recovers first, her shock morphing into desperate denial. CEO? She sputters, the word foreign on her tongue when applied to me. Beside her, Sierra begins to unravel, her composure disintegrating faster than her mother's. Lies! She shrieks, drawing glances from nearby guests. It's all lies! She's stupid! I'm the successful one. The desperation in her voice might once have satisfied me, but now I feel only a cold pity. The person I've become doesn't need her destruction to validate my worth. I graduated from Yale. Sarah announces, her voice climbing higher. Yale? I keep my tone even, almost sympathetic. That's funny. I heard you flunked out of community college after one semester. Her eyes widen with genuine terror, the foundation of her identity, her supposed superiority cracking beneath her. And, partner at the foundation? I continue. My sources say you're an unpaid events volunteer. Preston's face hardens as he processes years of deception. I see him mentally revisiting conversations, recalculating the story of his relationship. My God, he whispers, almost to himself. It's all been a lie. I recognize the look, the cataloging of inconsistencies suddenly making sense, the vague references to college friends without specifics, the diploma that was always mysteriously lost during moves, the foundation title that never appeared on any official materials. Sierra's carefully crafted persona disintegrates in real time. She looks wildly between Preston and my parents, finding no sanctuary in their shocked expressions. You bitch, she hisses, turning back to me. Before anyone can react, her hand swings out, connecting with Preston's cheek in a slap that echoes through our corner of the ballroom. Security guards materialize within seconds, moving toward the commotion with practiced efficiency. Preston stands motionless, one hand cradling his reddening cheek, eyes filled with disgust. We're done, he says flatly. Get her out of here. The security team gently but firmly takes Sierra by the arms. She thrashes against their hold, her designer dress twisting around her legs as she screams accusations and threats that grow more incoherent with each passing second. I meet Elias's eyes across the chaos. A silent communication passes between us, a question about our next move. I nod imperceptibly. It's time to leave this battleground on our own terms. The war has just begun, but the first victory is undeniably ours. The quiet hum of late-night Manhattan traffic drifted through the windows of the Baccarat Hotel's upscale lounge. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over Carlin and Elias as they sat in a secluded corner, far from curious eyes. Carlin's fingers trembled slightly around her glass, the amber liquid inside catching the light with each small movement. The Metropolitan Foundation Gala had ended hours ago, but the adrenaline still coursed through her veins. Elias didn't push for conversation. He simply sat beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. The understanding between them needed no words tonight had changed everything. The careful walls Carlin had built around her past had been breached, and there was no going back. I never expected to see them again, Carlin finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. She stared into her drink, seeing not the expensive cocktail but the shocked faces of her family. Part of me always knew this day might come, but... Her voice trailed off, unable to fully articulate the strange mix of relief and pain that washed through her. 12 years of silence had ended in less than 15 minutes of confrontation. Elias covered her hand with his. You stood your ground, that's what matters. Morning brought no respite. Carlin's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts from unknown numbers. She scrolled through them in her home office, coffee growing cold beside her laptop. Eleanor's voicemail was particularly vicious. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. Do you have any idea what you've done? Arthur's message followed, his surgeon's voice stripped of its clinical detachment. You'll regret this public spectacle. We raised you better than this. Worst were Sierra's texts, each one more unhinged than the last. The perfect facade of the golden child had crumbled completely, revealing the desperation beneath. By midday, Carlin received word through business channels that Preston had canceled the engagement. The Robinson family had wasted no time launching a counteroffensive, spreading whispers about Datasphere's business practices and Carlin's character to anyone who would listen. 3 days later, Carlin stood in her office at DataSphere headquarters, gazing at the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The room was a testament to her success. Awards lined the shelves, patents hung in sleek frames, and team photos captured moments of triumph that no one in her family had bothered to acknowledge. Her eyes drifted to a small frame tucked on a lower shelf. Her high school graduation photo, the one day when her accomplishments should have been celebrated. The image showed her alone in cap and gown, no proud parents or family members beside her. She had taught herself to code that summer, determined that if education was to be denied her, she would find another path. "Mrs. Thorne, your legal team is here," her executive assistant announced, interrupting her thoughts. Carlin turned from the window, squaring her shoulders. "Send them in." As the door closed, she added in a voice that carried the weight of her decision, "It's time to document everything." Over the next 2 weeks, Carlin approached her family's attacks with the same methodical precision that had built her company from nothing. Every call, every text, every rumor was cataloged and countered. She would not be blindsided again. The parking garage at Mount Sinai Hospital was nearly empty when Carlin visited a client who was recovering from surgery. The sharp click of her heels echoed between concrete pillars as she made her way toward her car. She didn't notice the figure stepping from behind a column until it was directly in her path. "Carlin." Her father's voice stopped her cold. "Doctor." Arthur Robinson looked haggard, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. "This has gone too far. You must fix this." "Fix what exactly?" Carlin asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The truth coming out?" Arthur stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you know how many lawsuits are surfacing now? Without Preston's legal protection, former patients are coming forward with claims that could ruin me." The pieces clicked together in Carlin's mind. Preston's firm had been burying malpractice claims. No wonder they'd been so eager to cement the connection through marriage. "Sounds like you're reaping what you've sown," Carlin replied, moving to step around him. Arthur reached for her arm but stopped himself. "We're your family, Carlin." "No," she said simply. "You haven't been my family since you stole my future and threw me out." The next morning, Elias informed her he'd arranged a security detail for her. "Just until things settle," he explained. Over breakfast, his concern evident. DataSphere's board unanimously voted to support her against the smear campaign, understanding that the company's success was inextricably tied to Carlin's leadership. Her legal team worked tirelessly, building documentation of all family interactions should they be needed in the future. Most surprising was the email from Preston. "I want you to know I had no idea about your history with the Robinsons. Sarah left some personal items at my apartment. If there's anything there that might help you, it's yours." A week later, Carlin sat in her office with her executive team, watching the local news station on the wall-mounted screen. Prominent surgeon Dr. Arthur Robinson under investigation following multiple allegations of malpractice spanning over a decade. There was no satisfaction in watching her father's career implode, only a quiet resolution that justice sometimes found its way without her intervention. Her team gathered around her desk in silent solidarity, their presence more meaningful than any biological connection had ever been. Her phone rang, displaying the number of a major competitor. The CEO's voice was smooth, practiced. "Carlin, we've been watching the situation with interest. Perhaps this would be a good time to discuss a merger? To strengthen against any potential reputation damage?" Carlin's eyes swept over her team, reading their confidence in her. "We're stronger than ever. No need to merge from fear." After she hung up, the approving nods from her executives confirmed what she already knew. They respected her leadership, especially through this personal crisis. That evening in their penthouse, the careful composure Carlin had maintained for days finally cracked. Elias found her on the balcony, silent tears streaming down her face as she looked out over the city lights. "You don't have to be strong every minute," he said softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "For 12 years I believed I was nothing," she whispered, "that I deserved what they did. That I was defective." The word caught in her throat, the label that had defined her for so long. "I keep waiting to feel satisfaction seeing them fall apart," she continued, wiping away tears. "But I just feel free." Elias pulled her closer. "That's because you're nothing like them." The next day, Carlin sat across from a forensic accountant in the conference room, reviewing documents spread across the polished table. Bank statements showed the clear transfer of $150,000 from her trust fund to Serafina's personal account 12 years ago. Beside them lay receipts for Sarah's debutante expenses, totaling the exact amount. This is textbook embezzlement of a trust fund, the lawyer confirmed, tapping the papers. We could press charges immediately. Carlin considered the evidence before her. No, she decided. Let's keep this as our insurance policy. They'll make their next move soon enough. That night, her phone rang just after midnight. The screen displayed an unknown number, but Carlin knew instantly who it was. Carlin. Eleanor's voice sounded uncharacteristically broken. It's your father. He's lost his license. Carlin said nothing, waiting for what would inevitably follow. We need your help, Eleanor continued, desperation creeping into her voice. We're your family. Across the room, Elias looked up from his book. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange was the strength of a true partnership. No, Eleanor, Carlin replied, her voice firm and clear. You're not my family. You're just people who share my DNA. She heard Eleanor's sharp intake of breath before ending the call, cutting the final thread that had bound her to her past. 3 weeks after the gala incident, I sat in the glass-walled conference room of Datasphere's executive floor. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces of my leadership team as we reviewed quarterly projections. The analytics division had exceeded targets by 17%, and our newest algorithm was performing better than expected in beta testing. These numbers look promising, I said, making notes on my tablet. Let's discuss scaling the rollout schedule. My assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway, her usual composed expression replaced by barely concealed anxiety. She gestured apologetically. Mrs. Thorne, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your lawyer is on the phone. She says it's urgent. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. I nodded to my CFO to continue the presentation and stepped into my office, closing the door behind me. Diane, what's happened? I asked, keeping my voice level despite the apprehension building in my chest. The Robinsons have filed a lawsuit against you, she said without preamble. They're claiming $5 million for elderly support and family obligation. They're citing filial responsibility statutes. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not shock, I'd half expected something like this, but the sheer audacity of their demand. $5 million. After everything they'd done. I took a deep breath, my mind already calculating potential moves and countermoves. Send me the full complaint. I'll clear my afternoon schedule. Are you all right, Carlin? Diane asked, concern evident in her voice. Perfectly fine, I replied, already thinking 3 steps ahead. This isn't unexpected, just disappointing. Within the hour, I had assembled my legal team in the private conference room on the 35th floor. 5 attorneys sat around the table as Diane laid out the details of the Robinson family's claim. They're arguing that as financially successful offspring, you have a legal obligation to support your elderly parents in their time of need, she explained, scrolling through the complaint on her tablet. They've cited your annual income, the value of your company, and even included photos of your penthouse from that architectural magazine spread last year. Jonathan, our lead counsel, frowned as he reviewed the documents. It's a desperate move, but one that could drag on for years if we let it. Even with the flimsiest of legal grounds, the discovery process alone would be invasive and time-consuming. And the publicity? I asked, already anticipating the answer. Potentially damaging, admitted Caroline, our PR director. They've already approached 2 financial news outlets for interviews. We've managed to delay publication, but they're painting themselves as abandoned elderly parents whose daughter has forgotten her roots. The conference room fell silent as everyone waited for my reaction. I could feel their concern not just for the company's reputation, but for me personally. These people knew me, had worked with me for years. They'd seen the aftermath of the gala incident, witnessed my composed exterior while navigating the initial media interest. We could settle, Jonathan suggested carefully. Make this go away quietly with a fraction of what they're asking. Say, $500,000? With ironclad NDAs, of course. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The glass felt cool against my fingertips as I considered our options. No, I said finally, turning back to face my team. I won't pay them a penny for their extortion. My voice remained steady, but the anger I felt had crystallized into something cold and precise, a weapon rather than a liability. Diane, contact Melissa Ross at Forensic Accounting. I need her team ready to work by tomorrow morning. The next day, I met with Melissa and her financial investigator, James Torres, in their downtown office. Spread across the conference table were stacks of documents, bank statements, trust fund paperwork, and legal filings dating back 12 years. We've established a clear paper trail, Melissa explained, arranging the evidence chronologically. When you turned 18, your grandparents' trust fund of $150,000 was placed under your parents' control as trustees. James pointed to several highlighted signatures. Here are Arthur and Eleanor Robinson's signatures on the transfer authorization. And here, he slid another document forward, is the bank statement showing the full amount transferred to Serafina Robinson's personal account 3 days after you left home. And these, Melissa continued, laying out a series of receipts, are payments to Broderick Events Planning, Elite Couture, and the Plaza Hotel, totaling exactly $150,000, all for Serafina's debutante ball that summer. I picked up one of the receipts, a custom gown from a designer boutique. The date matched perfectly with when I had been sleeping on a friend's couch, working double shifts at a coffee shop. This is clear evidence of embezzlement from a trust fund, James stated matter-of-factly. The money was specifically designated for your education, according to the original trust documents. Unfortunately, Melissa added, the statute of limitations for criminal charges has expired, but this evidence is compelling for a civil countersuit. I nodded, taking photographs of each document with my phone. Make copies of everything. I want this information ready for our legal team by this afternoon. 2 days later, the first blow landed. The Robinsons gave a tearful interview to a local news program. Eleanor, dressed in a modestly priced sweater set that I had never seen her wear before, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief as she described their financial hardships following Arthur's unjust loss of his medical license. After all, we sacrificed for her education, Eleanor whimpered into the camera, for her to abandon us this way. The segment featured carefully selected family photos, me at 10 years old smiling between them at a Christmas gathering, another from my high school graduation with Arthur's arm awkwardly placed around my shoulders. Photos that created the illusion of a loving family, erasing the years of emotional abuse and neglect. By morning, DataSphere's stock had dipped 3 points. A small drop, but a warning of what could come if the narrative continued unchallenged. I was reviewing our response strategy when Elias called. I've activated my network, he said without greeting. 3 financial journalists are already looking into the Robinson family finances, and Preston Vance reached out. He wants to provide a sworn statement about Sarah's deceptions. That's unexpected, I replied, feeling a flicker of surprise. Not really. Apparently she tried to reconcile with him by claiming you manipulated him at the gala. He wasn't amused. Within hours, the DataSphere board issued a unanimous statement of complete confidence in my leadership. My employees organized a spontaneous social media campaign highlighting the company's achievements and my mentorship initiatives. Former teachers and academic advisors began coming forward with their own statements. She succeeded despite them, not because of them. My high school calculus teacher told a technology blog, Carlin built herself from nothing after that family discarded her. The tide was turning, but I knew we needed something more definitive to end this once and for all. That day, Rachel appeared at my door again. There's an elderly woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. Says her name is Margaret Thompson. A.S. The name meant nothing to me, but something in Rachel's expression made me curious. Send her in. Margaret Thompson walked slowly into my office, leaning slightly on a polished wooden cane. She had to be in her 80s, with carefully styled silver hair and alert eyes that assessed me with unexpected sharpness. I'm Margaret Thompson, she said, her voice stronger than her frail appearance suggested. I was your grandmother's best friend for 40 years. My breath caught. My grandparents had died when I was 14. I had few memories of them, just vague impressions of warmth and holiday visits. Please, sit down, I said, indicating the chair across from my desk. She settled herself carefully before continuing. I was the executor of your grandparents' trust fund. I've kept copies of all the original documents. From her handbag, She withdrew a folder of papers, yellowed with age but meticulously preserved in plastic sleeves. I suspected something wasn't right when I heard you hadn't gone to college, she continued, placing the folder on my desk. The trust was explicitly created for your education. But I couldn't prove anything without your cooperation, and by the time I tried to find you, you had disappeared. I opened the folder with steady hands. There it was, the original trust stipulations in clear black and white. For the higher education of our granddaughter, Carlin Eleanor Robinson. I should have done more, Margaret said, regret heavy in her voice. I'm sorry. By the end of the week, my legal team had filed a countersuit for embezzlement. The media narrative shifted dramatically as evidence of the Robinsons' deception emerged. Former patients of Dr. Robinson began coming forward with accounts of questionable practices now that the protective umbrella of Preston's law firm had been withdrawn. The Robinson family home appeared on real estate listings, priced well below market value for a quick sale. Eleanor's calls to my office came daily, then hourly, all blocked by Rachel's diligent screening. A business contact reported seeing Sarah moving her possessions from her luxury apartment into a modest rental in Queens. Late that night, I sat alone in my office, the lights of the city twinkling beyond the windows. On my desk sat an old photograph I had unearthed from a storage box, me at 10 years old, sitting between Arthur and Eleanor at a rare family dinner, where they had seemed almost proud of me. It was taken before things changed, before Sarah became the focus of all their hopes and ambitions, before I became the defective one. Is this the right path? I whispered to myself, tracing the edge of the photo with my fingertip. The soft click of the door opening made me look up. Elias stood there, his tie loosened, jacket draped over his arm. Thought I might find you here, he said, crossing the room to sit quietly beside me. He didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just offered his presence as I sorted through my thoughts. They chose this war, not me, I said finally, setting the photograph face down on the desk. I could feel my strength returning, the momentary doubt washing away under the certainty that I was finally reclaiming what had been taken from me, not just money, but dignity and truth. Tomorrow we end this, I said, my voice firm with resolve. The next morning my phone rang just as I stepped out of the shower. Diane's name flashed on the screen. The judge has ordered mandatory mediation before trial, she said, her tone suggesting this was significant news. Face-to-face confrontation with the Robinson family within the week. This is actually perfect, Diane continued. Are you ready to face them? I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, seeing not the defective daughter they had discarded, but the woman who had built herself into someone they could never have imagined. I've been ready for 12 years, I replied. Elias appeared behind me, meeting my eyes in the mirror. He reached for my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze of solidarity as we prepared for the final confrontation. On the confrontation day, I sit perfectly still in the sterile, windowless mediation room, my back straight and eyes forward. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the conference table where my parents await my arrival. They look like strangers now, haggard shadows of the polished figures who once commanded respect in every room they entered. Eleanor fidgets with the cuff of her cheap suit jacket, a far cry from the designer labels she once wore like armor. Beside her, Arthur hunches forward, the once proud surgeon now diminished, his eyes fixed on the scratched surface of the conference table. Their lawyer, a nervous man with thinning hair and ill-fitting clothes, shuffles papers without purpose, clearly out of his depth. When Elias and I enter with my legal team, the shift in power is palpable. My Armani suit feels like battle armor as I take my seat across from them, my expression revealing nothing of the storm of emotions churning beneath my composed exterior. Carlin, darling. Eleanor extends her hand toward me, her voice softening into the maternal tone she reserves for public performances. Can't we talk as family? This has all gone too far. This has gone far enough, Carlin, Arthur adds, his voice attempting to summon the authoritative tone he once used to silence me at the dinner table. The effect is hollow now, like an actor who's forgotten his lines. Their lawyer clears his throat. Miss Robinson, surely you understand the importance of family loyalty. There's been a misunderstanding about the trust fund. Your parents have always wanted what's best for you. After all we've done for you, Eleanor adds, her eyes glistening with tears, I recognize as manufactured. I've seen this performance before. I remain silent, watching as they reveal their desperation with every word. Elias sits beside me, his steady presence anchoring me against the undertow of old conditioning that threatens to pull me back into doubt. The Robinsons' lawyer straightens his crooked tie and pushes a document forward. We're asking for $5 million in support under filial responsibility laws. Your parents are experiencing financial hardship, and as their daughter, you have a legal obligation to provide care. His voice gains confidence as he continues. This process could drag on for years, Miss Robinson. The media attention alone could damage your company's reputation irreparably. He leans forward, lowering his voice. This will follow you forever unless you settle. The room falls silent as all eyes turn to me. I feel Elias's hand brush mine under the table, a reminder that I am not alone this time. My lawyer, a silver-haired woman with razor-sharp eyes, places a single manila folder on the table. The sound of it sliding across the polished surface seems to echo in the tense silence. Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, she begins, her voice calm and measured. You are suing for parental support. However, we have here the financial records for the $150,000 trust fund left for Carlin's education. She opens the folder and slides several bank statements across the table. These statements show the full amount was liquidated and transferred to Miss Seraphina Robinson's personal account. Arthur's face pales as she continues. The transfer occurred exactly 3 days after Carlin was forced from your home. My lawyer taps a fingernail against the date highlighted in yellow. And, according to these receipts, the purpose appears to have been to pay for what appears to be a debutante ball. The door opens, and Margaret Thompson walks in, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 78, she carries herself with quiet dignity, clutching a leather portfolio to her chest. This is Margaret Thompson, my lawyer announces. She was the executor of the trust established by Carlin's grandparents. Margaret opens her portfolio and produces the original trust documents. These stipulate that the funds were exclusively for Carlin's education, she explains, her voice steady despite her age. My lawyer continues the assault, placing more documents on the table. Fraudulent transfer papers bearing Arthur and Eleanor's signatures. Receipts from vendors for the debutante ball that match the exact amount of my trust fund. And finally, photographs of Sarah in an elaborate custom gown. That isn't support, my lawyer says, leaning in so that my parents can't escape her gaze. In this state, it's called embezzlement. She pauses, letting the word hang in the air. And it is a felony. Eleanor gasps, her hand flying to her throat, a gesture I've seen her practice in the mirror. Arthur physically shrinks in his chair, eyes fixed on the damning evidence before him. Their lawyer whispers urgently in their ears, his face ashen. We need a moment, their lawyer requests, ushering my parents out of the room. When they return 15 minutes later, all traces of arrogance have vanished. Eleanor's makeup is smudged beneath her eyes. Arthur looks like he's aged a decade in the brief recess. We would like to withdraw our lawsuit immediately, their lawyer announces, his voice flat. We're prepared to proceed with criminal charges, my lawyer counters. Please, Carlin. Eleanor's voice breaks, stripped of its usual manipulation. We'll lose everything. Arthur cannot even look at me, his hands trembling as they rest on the table. The man who once commanded operating rooms now appears utterly defeated. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of this moment a crossroads I never expected to reach. Memories flash through my mind, being called defective at the dinner table, watching Sarah receive praise for mediocrity while my achievements were dismissed, signing away my future on blind trust. The night they changed the locks on our family home. I won't press criminal charges, I finally say, my voice strong and clear. Relief flashes across their faces, but I continue before they can speak. In exchange for a permanent, ironclad restraining order, I never want to see or hear from any of you again. The papers are signed within the hour. The Robinsons leave quickly, shoulders slumped in defeat, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. I remain seated as the mediator confirms. This matter is officially resolved, Miss Robinson. I stand, feeling taller than I ever have before. Elias takes my hand, pride evident in his eyes. Masterfully handled, my lawyer says quietly. It's finally over, I reply, and for the first time, I truly believe it. Outside the building, bright sunlight warms my face. I take a deep breath of fresh air, feeling lighter than I have in years. My phone buzzes in my pocket, a news alert about the Robinsons' bankruptcy filing. I don't click to read the details. Instead, I turn my phone off completely and take Elias's hand. Let's go home, I say, looking toward the future, rather than the past. I'm ready for what's next. I stand at the floor-to-ceiling windows of DataSphere's expanded headquarters, watching as the marketing director guides our newest client through the final signing ceremony. Sunlight streams across the polished conference table, where a contract worth twice our previous record waits for signatures. 6 months since the mediation, and the company hasn't just survived the controversy, we've thrived beyond any projection. Mrs. Thorne? A young woman in a crisp blazer approaches with a tablet. I have the quarterly numbers ready for your review. Thank you, Jessica. I accept the device, scanning the upward trending graphs. First day going well? Her eyes widen slightly. How did you know? The extra starched collar. I smile, remembering my own early days. You'll find things are fairly relaxed here once you settle in. Jessica nods, visibly relaxing. I was nervous, especially working directly with the founder. My professor used your algorithm as a case study last semester. I noticed the absence in her words, no reference to tabloid stories, no hint of recognition about the Robinson scandal. To her, I'm simply the CEO who built something remarkable. The defective label that once clung to me like a second skin has no power here. If you have questions about the development path, my door is open. I tell her, we have a mentorship program for new programmers that might interest you. I'd love that. Thank you. As she walks away, I catch sight of Elias through the glass walls of my office, leaning against my desk with a small wrapped package. He spots me and raises an eyebrow. Later that afternoon, I decline an invitation from the Business Leaders Council while sorting through emails. You know, they'd love to have you speak at the spring symposium. My assistant remarks. Huge exposure. I appreciate the opportunity, but I'll pass. I close the email with a single click. Because the Robinsons might attend? She asks, then immediately looks apologetic. Sorry, that was unprofessional. No, it's a fair question. I lean back in my chair. Some bridges should remain burned. It's not about fear, it's about boundaries. I don't need to share oxygen with people who tried to destroy me. My phone buzzes with a message from Elias. Still on for tonight? 7 p.m. sharp. I smile, responding with a simple, wouldn't miss it. The restaurant's private dining room glows with candlelight when I arrive that evening. Instead of just Elias, I found a small gathering, my chief technology officer, Marcus, Jessica, from legal, and 3 others, who stood firmly beside me during the lawsuit. Surprise, Elias says, taking my hand. 1 year since DataSphere's biggest contract signing. Seemed worth celebrating. Marcus raises his glass. To Carlin, who taught us all that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up, Jessica adds. Their faces reflect back what I've built, not just a company, but connections based on respect rather than obligation. The warmth in the room feels nothing like the cold formality of Robinson family gatherings. I'm grateful to each of you. I say, my voice steady. You saw value where others saw deficiency. After dinner, Marcus pulls me aside. The Scholarship Foundation paperwork is finalized. First disbursements go out next semester. The DataSphere Educational Trust, my answer to the trust fund that was stolen from me. 5 full rides annually for disadvantaged students without family support, with personal mentoring included. The cycle of educational inequality breaking, 1 student at a time. Perfect timing, I tell him. I'd like to be there when we announce the first recipients. 2 weeks later, I accept a humanitarian award from the Technology Leadership Council, standing before a crowd that rises to their feet as my name is announced. The applause washes over me like warm water. I think fleetingly of another gala, of whispered words and grasping hands, but the memory holds no pain now. My acceptance speech focuses entirely on future opportunities, rather than past struggles. Not one word about the Robinsons escapes my lips. They don't deserve even that much space in my life. That evening, Elias and I stand on our penthouse balcony. City lights spread before us like fallen stars. The award sits on the coffee table behind us, its crystal surface catching the soft lamplight. Do you ever think about them? Elias asks, his arm around my waist. I consider the question, realizing the answer comes easier now. less and less each day. That's healing. They didn't break me, I say, leaning into his embrace. They showed me how strong I could be. The night air feels clean in my lungs, no longer heavy with old resentments or pain. Some people teach you what to become, others teach you what to never be. I'm grateful for both lessons now. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see your true worth? What gave you the strength to stand your ground? Share your thoughts in the comments below.